It's been a long time coming, but today we are ranking every single season of Drag Race in the US, and it's all thanks to you. About 2 months ago at this point, I asked you guys to fill out a Google form ranking each of the seasons of Drag Race that you've seen. You ranked them from 1 to 10, and if you wanted to, you could give a reason, and a lot of those will be shared in this video today. I took each of the rankings and exported them to a Google Sheet, averaged them out, and then that's how we got our ranking. It's definitely not the most foolproof, enough college classes have told me that, but I think it's the best and most fun way I could go about things in this style. There was one person or bot that ranked season 8 like 500 times out of 10, and I'm just guessing it's Bob the Drag Queen or something, so I did throw that data out and re-average that score. I'll eventually do my own full personal ranking, but I'll give bits of my opinions in this video. You'll see as we go along. So with no more interruptions, let's start this ranking. Comment below what you think is ranked the lowest and what's going to top the list. In dead last, we have All Stars 1, and I don't think that's a big surprise to anyone. All Stars 1 had one of the best casts that has ever been cast, and it was riding the high of season 4 where the budget started to increase and a lot of the hype was growing. But all of the hype of this potential All Stars season was destroyed immediately in episode 1 when they revealed that there was a teams twist. These really legendary queens that all deserved a solo shot at the crown were then forced into teams and they had no idea beforehand. So it basically turned into a scrambling game where everyone was just trying to be coherent with their partner, and the performances, the runways, basically everything suffered. There were a lot of iconic moments that did come from the season, like episode 1's Untucked, Chad being the rightful winner, and the outside challenge that they did, but that was few and far between challenges like the Gaffin, where it was really clear they had no idea what they were doing. Enough time has passed for people to start speculating and wanting another season like this where there are teams, but you know the queens would go into the season knowing that they were a team. It's an infamous season, we all know it, and they learn from their mistakes, so there isn't much more to say. This is unfortunately my least favorite season. I was so excited for the cast of legendary queens, but the twist was so bad. The fact that I didn't enjoy the challenges did not help. It's just, yeah, terrible, but it had so much potential. If they waited a little longer to have more budget and cast the same queens this season, it would have been iconic, but the teams format ruined it. I didn't choose one because at least it had some iconic moments. Yeah, the twist was bad. I rewatched it a while ago and the season wasn't like boring or anything, but goddamn that twist. All Stars 1 scores a 3.84 out of 10. I think All Stars 1 being at the bottom was the most obvious pick, but there are a couple seasons that could occupy this next spot. Coming in at number 22, we have All Stars 5, a season that is so predictable that you don't even need to read the spoilers to guess the top 3. This season served as a weird in-between for the All Stars formats, because they wanted to get away from the top 2 format. You can see my Naomi video for why they wanted to do that, but at the same time, this new format that they came up with was just not ironed out enough. There were 10 queens and 7 challenges, and Miss Cracker won half of them. The top 3 had 6 of the 7 wins, and the only other person won in the first episode. So they rightfully dominated the season because they had a lot of great performances, but there were other queens that got lost in the mix and didn't get the rightful praise. Most notably Alexis Mateo, who could have had a couple challenge wins if it was a top 2. And the lip sync assassins this season didn't seem to really try as hard, and or they were told to not give it their all. I mean, there's rumors that have been floating around forever about that. There were 2 episodes that were complete standouts and almost made the season worth it. The premiere and Snatch Game were both extremely entertaining for the drama that India brought. And if Derek stayed longer, I think the season would have been more entertaining, but I mean, everyone has said that. I wanted to give it a 1, but it just had some iconic moments, and I do love the queens. It felt way too predictable as we just watched and waited for Shay to win, and the lip sync assassin twist did not work here. Unpopular opinion, but I love the Shay Cracker Juju domination. Predictable and boring, cast was underutilized. All Stars 5 scores a 4.43 out of 10. All Stars 8 is the most recent season, and it's the next on the list, and it's a season that not a lot of people really love. It was a really confused cast with a lot of heavy hitter finalists that have been around the Drag Race sun multiple times, people like Candy and Jimbo, mixed in with people like Monica Beverly Hills and James Mansfield and Kahana Montrese, who have barely been on TV at all. Drag experience is one thing, all of them had that, but TV experience and competition experience is a much different thing, and some people were just leagues ahead of others. So it was just a grueling drag to a top 2 for some reason this season, comprised of the 2 queens that I mentioned earlier, Candy and Jimbo, who deserved to be there for sure, but it just felt like their competition wasn't as experienced. Pair that with some uncomfortable drama, a fan favorite queen quitting really early into the season, some questionable judging, and some good challenge performances, I'll give them that. It creates a product that's not really fun to watch, and from the vibes of the season, not really fun to film either. Lots of good queens, but a predictable winner. We didn't even get to see Mother Darian lip sync. I completely agree with that. Just disappointing and boring, and one of the only seasons I didn't get excited for each week. It didn't feel like a normal season. I don't know how to explain it, but the edit felt like they were hiding important parts, and it was almost painful how obvious Jimbo's win was. All Stars 8 scores a 4.85 out of 10. Also, if you enjoy my content, please consider subscribing. I'm trying to hit 100k by the end of the year, and with your help, I could totally do that. Majority of you guys aren't subscribed, so I would just love to have you here. Jumping back all the way in time from the most recent season to the oldest season, we have RuPaul's Drag Race Season 1. And honestly, both me and my viewers just didn't have much to say. The bottom 3 seasons all have really apparent issues, but something like Season 1, I mean, it's just not the same show. That's like the biggest thing about it. It's just a lower budget and you can really tell. But even with the low budget, so much of Season 1 is done right from the start. The format remains ultimately unchanged 15 years later at this point. A lot of the challenges they use here are still used today. They had all the right ingredients, just not the money to purchase those ingredients. BB had a really compelling winner story. There were upsets in the lip syncs. For a first draft, they knocked it out of the park, and you can never make me hate the season. But you can never make me put it higher, and I'm happy my viewers tend to agree. It's a good season overall, an amazing way to start, but I'm giving it a lower score because it is the first season and they were still trying to figure things out. There are some clear downsides to the season, so I can't rate it very high. However, there were also some amazing moments and they did the best with the small budget they were on. Yes, legendary, yes, it opened doors, but genuinely compared to the rest of the seasons, this one is bare and hard to get attached to anyone. Season 1 scores a very fitting 5.5 out of 10. Season 13 has some high highs and some low lows. The first episode is offensively terrible on so many different levels. I've talked about it many times. A terrible mistake that kills the pacing of the season before the season even really starts. But even after that, it takes a long time for the season to get going because we had split premieres with no eliminations, and then a double Shantae not long after that. You can see all of the producer meddling the season to push who they want to push, and that's fine. That's part of the show, and that's how they get their best product. But the way it was done here was sloppy, and it showed a lot of their cards. A lot of the challenges this season just fell flat, and we can partially blame that on COVID restrictions, and also praise them for the fact that they filmed during the COVID restrictions. That's really wonderful, and it gives reasoning behind some of the choices. And the big silver lining was the cast was great. I'm a big fan of Candy Muse, and I love Simone as a winner. And the runways were immaculate, probably the best season for runways next to like All-Star 7. But even with all this good, there is just so many frustrating parts, and it makes it hard to go back and rewatch. I never finished it, couldn't stand the rigging, and never gelled with the cast. Almost made me stop watching Drag Race. The Pork Chop Lounge was so psychologically shitty for the queens, and it went downhill from there. The two things I have to give credit for this season are the stellar runways and the great cast. Other than that, it was a train wreck. A lot of challenges felt empty, and the premiere twist was the worst we've ever seen in my opinion. I think this season was cursed to be bad from the beginning, but it did leave us with some good moments in queens, especially my mothers, Candy and Olivia. Overhated, has its annoying moments, but relatively good. Season 13 scores a 5.641, the one will matter in a second, out of 10. Season 13 and Season 11 are kind of sisters, to be honest, and that's because they have a lot of the same issues, the biggest being the production meddling. And I feel like in Season 11, it's almost more frustrating because a lot of the major meddling happens later in the season when it matters more. Queens unrightfully put into the bottom, other queens being overlooked, Brooklyn and Evie being in the top almost every week. They were great and easily the most dominant of the season, but sometimes that just doesn't make the best watch. But the big difference is that the challenges here weren't as memorable in my opinion. But I think the season just has the advantage of time and some iconic moments that are looked at really fondly. The Sorry Not Sorry lip sync, the meh moment. Like with Season 15, they got the right winner. I love Evie as a winner, and basically all of the storylines were around her. Former queens like Raja and Silky changing their narrative and making rewatches way more entertaining. This is also the last season where I feel like they really paint some queens in a negative light. It's a chaotic season and everyone is fighting for the spotlight, but on a rewatch, I think it is a little better than Season 13. How much better in the eyes of the viewers? 0.004. Judging is whack, drama felt mean-spirited, and the season felt long. Really apparent rigging and no good storylines. Underrated. This is drama. The drama was juicy every single week. Watching this made me feel invested and waiting to see what was going to happen next. Even if the judging was crunchy, it's carried by the entertaining queens this cast has. Also, a day one Raja stan, she is so entertaining, she was so ahead of her time. I think of so many of her iconic moments and laugh all the time. Season 11 scores a 5.645 out of 10. Hi, I'm Jack, and this is Henry. Henry, say hi. Nice. This video is sponsored by Sundays. Sundays is a healthy dog food brand that is easy to store and serve. That's one of my favorite things about it. You could scoop this human grade quality food right out of the bag into your dog's bowl and they'll go crazy. This stays between you and me, but Henry's kind of a picky eater. So I was pretty shocked when he became obsessed with Sundays. If you look at him now, he doesn't really do this with food that often, but he's like actually like Like, he's really excited for it. One of my goals for the year is trying to diet and exercise, but we can't forget about our best friends too. This is a great time to switch your dog food brand to something that's healthy, 90% meat, 10% vegetables, and no synthetic nutrients. I'm really impressed by the ingredient list for Sundays, and if you want to try it out, get 50% off your first order of Sundays. Go to sundaysfoodfordogs.com/ What is happening? Go to sundaysfordogs.com/JackFed or use code JackFed at checkout. That gets you 50% off your first order. Henry says thank you to Sundays, and now you say goodbye to Henry. Thank you. If this was my personal ranking, season 10, which is up next, would be a lot lower. I just don't really like the season. But I am happy that my viewers tend to enjoy it a little more. What I find the most frustrating is the challenges, the big meat of the season, I just didn't really enjoy. A lot of them were really boring, some of them just were in poor taste, some were unfair. I mean, this is the season with the Evil Twins challenge after all. It felt like they saw the success of season 9 and then tried to recreate it at every turn, while at the same time being really insecure with their own product. And it just leaves this weird tone for the season where they're trying so hard, but you can feel the sense of trying and not the sense of fun. A lot of the moments from season 9 were really lightning in a bottle, and not to spoil too much of the list, but season 9 is ranking a lot higher. The two biggest examples of them trying to recreate these moments are with the lip sync for the crown and Christina Aguilera's entrance. The celebrity entrances, they're always great and they're always fun, and they've been able to put a spin on it in recent seasons in a lot better ways, but when they got Christina, it didn't really feel like a big thing because she came into the episode so late. I'm guessing it had to do with scheduling issues and she had to come in a lot later, but coming off of season 9, they wanted to do something similar like Gaga walking in the workroom. The issue is Lady Gaga was there the entire time, walking in the workroom and there for the main challenge. So nothing's really going to compare, and I feel like they were panicking because there were so many new eyes on them. And that brings us to lip sync for the crown, where the next most iconic moment was Sasha Velour's reveal in season 9. And we all know what happened in the finale of season 10. There was such an over-reliance on reveals. You could just really feel this insane pressure on everyone, the cast and the crew, to recreate the magic of season 9 or just hold the attention of all the new viewers. And what's positive is they were able to hold a lot of the attention. I mean, Miss Vanjie came from this season. And there's other fan favorites like Mo Hart and Monet, and I think Aquaria is a great winner. There was just so much stress to keep the momentum going, and as a general fan who just kind of watches the show whenever, I think it does work, but as a super fan, when you compare it to the rest of the seasons, it just doesn't really stack up. And lest we forget the treatment of the Vixen, which is so uncomfortable. I'm so glad she got the conversation started, and she really changed the game in a lot of ways. I just feel so bad going back and watching it, especially the reunion. A lot of dumb challenges, the treatment the Vixen received, that chaotic finale lip sync. This was the very first season I watched live. Nostalgia aside, I don't like this season. The Rusical was mid, the design challenges were mid, the judging was mid. Personally, my biggest gripe of the season is the terrible way production treated the Vixen. My most favorite aspect of the season is how it birthed some of my favorite queens like Asia, Monet, and Mo Hart. Season 10 scores a 5.86 out of 10. If I were to do this ranking 5 years ago, I think this next season would probably be near the bottom, but it's slowly making its way up, and I feel like next year, if I do this ranking again, it might be even higher. And that season is season 7. It's so complex how this season birthed so many stars for their talents, while on the season they didn't really get to showcase many of their talents. Let me just throw out a couple names for you. Violet Chachki, Kennedy Davenport, Ginger Minj, Pearl, Jasmine Masters, Trixie Mattel, Katya. These are some of the most well-known names from the show, or even beyond the show like with Trixie and Katya. Or people like Miss Fame who've widely separated themselves from the Drag Race fandom and the brand, and are also wildly successful. Queens like Max or Jaden Dior Fierce, or even early outs like Temps de Jour. All of these queens have really stuck around and stuck to the viewers. And ultimately, I think it's because they all just stuck their heads in the dirt and started to work after their season. And they're also differently talented that it worked to their benefit because they could all be successful in the same space. I say all of that because on the season, not a lot of their talents were showcased. Most of the season ended up being team comedy challenges in some way. There were a couple design challenges thrown in, but it was mostly comedy. And when a lot of the cast ends up being young fashion queens who aren't the best at comedy, the products for these challenges end up being really lackluster. Queens like Ginger, Kennedy, and Katya were able to excel at these comedy challenges, and the other young fashion queens who were able to do decent like Violet and Pearl were able to get far in the competition too, but just the way they mapped out the season with this specific cast, it wasn't playing to their strengths. I mean, even some of the big performance challenges of the season, I'm thinking like the Rusical or the John Waters number, they were still skewed way more towards comedy, and that's just such a disservice to people like Kennedy Davenport, one of the best performers from the show. And the way they edit the queens on screen, none of them really come out looking that great outside of like Katya. The older comedy queens who should be excelling at these challenges are framed as bitter, while the young fashion queens are framed as struggling and in over their heads. Don't get me wrong, the queens who go further in the competition, they get their moments to shine. I just personally think it's all set up with no satisfying payoff. Like I talked about Violet recently and how they tried to push this narrative that she's becoming a really nice queen. And I think that's great, but it just wasn't shown properly on the show. The whole old versus young storyline, I wish it paid off where the older queens learn from the younger and younger learn from older, but in the last episode that they filmed, they were still butting heads. The opinions on the season have only softened over time, and I think that's only going to improve. There's still a lot to love about the season and a ton of iconic moments. It's a train wreck, but I loved watching it burn. Overhated. I agree with the general consensus that the season is a bit lackluster. Violet is not my favorite winner, although I think she is very talented. But Katya really saved the season for me with her humor as well as her heartfelt stories about addiction, etc. Katya. Untucked YouTube felt more authentic. Season 7 scores a 6.29 out of 10. We got some classic seasons coming up next. I'm surprised that this one ranks just a little bit lower, but we have Drag Race Season 3. I had that little trip up because people often call this the Project Runway season of Drag Race. There's a lot of ironic back-to-back rankings because if Season 7 was over-reliant on comedy challenges, this was way over-reliant on design challenges. There were 4 design challenges and they were at least spaced out pretty well through the season, but there were 2 balls and I think that is a little ridiculous. The good part is that there were a lot of queens that were able to excel at the challenges, like the winner of the season, one of my favorite winners, Raja. And Raja was also able to reinvent the runway this season, which was really important. And talking about the queens, there's certain seasons of the show where you really feel like anyone can take it or anyone is determined to take it. Like sometimes we know from the edit that there are queens that aren't actually going to take the crown, but in their own head and how they present themselves on the season, there's just this confidence that they're like, yes, this crown is mine. And you really feel that here with basically the whole cast, even early outs like Maybe I'm First. As much as I like when queens are writing on the mirror and they're saying, yeah, I learned a lot, but I think it was my time. I do like when queens go out and they're like, I deserve to still be here. I'm better than all these other people. You kind of need this blind confidence and not compare yourself to other queens to win the whole season. And when a season has it, it makes it really entertaining. I didn't really care for the Heathers and Boogers drama, and sometimes it got a little distasteful, but it also feeds back into the blind confidence thing that I was talking about, so at least it's pretty compelling. Raja Mother. Good season narrative, although not handled the best in my opinion, with a cast where you could tell each of them wanted to be there and win. Season 3 will always be my favorite and ranked high because of how the cast interacts. I live for the chaotic drama of Heathers versus Boogers. Raja, Shangela, Manila, and all the others broke barriers on the season, and Raja will always be my favorite winner. Season 3 scores a 6.79 out of 10. And for the last of the original era, we have Season 2, and I'm kind of surprised it's this high, but I'm also kind of delighted. Season 1 was a great trial at Drag Race, but Season 2 is where Drag Race really fully forms. The workroom and the main stage are a lot more recognizable to today's. Snatch Game and the Reading Challenge happened the first time this season, and everything comes together this season to give Drag Race an identity going forward. The queens kind of knew what to expect, but walking back in, I feel like it was still uncharted territory. The show wasn't nearly as big and there were new aspects, a new environment, a whole new show with Untucked. So even with the reference of Season 1, they were going in partially blind to how this was gonna work. And I think that's what people enjoy about this season so much. It's Drag Race at its most raw. They didn't know how big it was gonna become, they didn't have to act a certain way, so they end up acting really shady towards each other, and it made a really great season. There are challenges in the first 3 seasons that don't hold up, but in Season 2, I feel like a lot of the performances are still really standout. Like in Snatch Game, Tatiana and Pandora put those characters in modern Snatch Game and they still be really successful. The Here Comes the Bride challenge, Tyra's design look, I still think about it a lot. And Tyra in general as a winner, I know she's not everyone's cup of tea, but I really enjoyed her on the season. It all holds up really well, and I'm glad that people are agreeing. Very entertaining. The drama, the talent, and the editing was to die for. Ravens, I would never say that montage is legendary, so was everything that came out of Jujubee's mouth. Early episodes are kind of bad, the drag isn't elevated, but this season is important because it documents what drag used to be. The cast is great and the drama was on. Had it had better production, it could have been more liked nowadays. Season 2 scores a 6.97 out of 10. We've now reached the seasons that have scored a 7 or higher, which I would consider the good seasons of the show. And we start off with the never-ending story that is Season 14. Season 14 holds a special place in my heart and a lot of other people's hearts because that's when I started creating content and a lot of you guys started to watch the show. It's a really feel-good season with a cast that is extremely likable that we get to know very well because a lot of them stick around for a very long time. For as much as I love this season for the challenges and the performances, you cannot deny that the pacing of this season is abysmal. I think Drag Race is at its worst when it tries to not be Drag Race. When it takes ideas and concepts from other shows and tries to implement them in the competition of Drag Race, which is so unique, it just detracts from the product that is Drag Race. So when we get the twist of the golden chocolate bar here, kind of like the immunity idol in Survivor, I think that's like the closest thing, it becomes a cool concept on paper, but it's the first nail in the coffin for the competition side of the season. It all felt very calculated on when and how it was going to be used, all to aid storylines on the show, and I think there is some good in that, but at the end of the day, it is still a competition reality show first, and it felt cheap. It was cheapened even more by the fact that there were other non-elimination episodes this season. The whole point of the golden chocolate bar was to save a queen from being eliminated, but when 5 other episodes of the season have no eliminations in them, what is the point of this chocolate bar when they can just kind of throw them around whenever they want to? Out of all the 2020 seasons of the show, this season is definitely the one that took the most swings, and I can't say they paid off production or competition wise, but there's still so much good about the season. Like I said, the cast is great and a lot of them are still having a ton of success today, and that's for good reason. Most recently, we've seen Maddie Morphosis basically take over YouTube, and honestly, we're better off with her becoming so successful. There were so few bad performances on the season outside of the obvious one being Snatch Game. The talent was just so consistently there, so even if people landed in the bottom, it wasn't for a performance that was laugh out loud bad. And the challenges in general were just really creative this season. We got challenges like Save a Queen and the Supercut, Daytona Wins being the first acting challenge to play into the post edit and making the queens react to it. Like, we've never seen something like that. A lot of the season was so refreshing because they were just throwing a lot of creative ideas at the wall. And if we got an elimination every week, we probably would have had a top tier season. Too long, a really fun season, but the constant non-elimination episodes really ruined the watching experience. When I say I don't give a fuck about the non-elimination episodes this season, I'm not lying. It was so innovative challenge-wise. Super Tease, Lollapalooza, the GG concept, and the cast is filled with amazing queens that I'm sure will demolish an all-star season in the future. Hashtag Deja Sky for All-Stars 10. Amazing cast, an amazing winner, but the chocolate twist had no impact considering all of the non-eliminations. Was also upset that we couldn't see more cornbread. Season 14 scores a 7.07 out of 10. And speaking of other twists that are taken from other shows like Survivor that have no place in Drag Race, we have All Stars 3. I have talked to death about the season and the twists that plague its second half, but I'll briefly touch on them again here. Bringing one of the eliminated queens back to the competition is a really great idea, but doing an elimination in the same week, especially out of the group that won the challenge, not a good idea. Doing a jury twist on a season, I guess in some ways could work, but doing it on a season where they eliminate each other and not tell them that they're doing a jury twist, that's a bad idea. It allowed Trixie to be in the good graces of basically everyone who was eliminated because she was in the top multiple times, but she was never the one who had to eliminate anyone. While someone like Shangela was in the top a lot of times and ended up eliminating people and making bitter jurors. If Shangela knew about the jury, maybe she would have chosen differently. If Trixie was better at lip syncing, maybe she would have eliminated someone. You get what I'm saying. But that first half of the season is so good performance wise. And of course, the major player that we have to thank for that is Ben de la Creme, who was in the top for basically every episode except the design one. It was her season to win basically from episode 2, I want to say. And yet instead she became Ben de la Christ. It was an iconic moment in Drag Race history. It helped to dismantle the All-Stars format along with Naomi. But of course, this twist made the endgame of the season extremely messy. It's still an amazing watch up to that point, and even the finale episode I do enjoy. I'm happy that Trixie won. The performances are great on the season. There's some good drama. It all really works for the most part. This was a 10 until Dela self-eliminated. Then it just descends into chaos. I really like the queens in the season, but everything that has been talked to death, Aja and Thorgy mistreatment, Dela self-eliminating, the jury twist, bring it down for me. It has its share of iconic moments though. Overhated in my opinion, but still kind of mid. All Stars 3 scores a 7.10 out of 10. I am shocked, I am gagged, I am gooped that this next season is as low as it is. If it was like 10 people's rankings, maybe I could see it being this low, but over 1,000 people ranked it this low? The season I'm talking about, one of the most influential seasons ever, is season 4. I think there are obvious reasons why this season has fallen out of favor. The winner of the season being Sharon Needles has had a multitude of issues surrounding her, and going back and watching a season that frames her as this big hero, it's kind of hard to watch. The way they depicted the villain of the season, Jeremy, also known as Fifi O'Hara, was also just not in the best taste. And though a lot of people have come around on Jeremy in recent years, what is immortalized in the Drag Race lexicon is not the best depiction, and Jeremy still gets hate till today. There's also behind the scenes stuff exposed by Willem, who likes to expose basically everything about the show. The cast was not treated the best and definitely not to today's standards, so everything surrounding the season has basically left a bad taste in people's mouths. And that's including mine. It's hard to really get behind the season in a lot of ways, but it's still just such an influential season, and I'm surprised that people ranked it so low. It's the first time we got a live finale, it's the first time where I saw a really notable increase in the budget. The storytelling of the season was really bad in terms of how it affected people's lives, but the way they started to tell these stories, it showed that they had a grasp of how to make really good TV. Sharon is widely agreed on to not be talked about, but her influence on people within the scene who are still talked about is kind of important. Because of her runways and how her drag was celebrated on the show, it allowed for a lot of new people to come into the scene and have their drag be appreciated. Something that I wish would happen again with other forms of drag, but we can only wish for that. Not to mention, there are still so many iconic queens from the season that are talked about today. This season gave us Latrice Royale, and I think that's an amazing thing. Aging like milk, but production stepped up their game with this one. The cast is again half heavy hitters and half forgettable. If it had a better winner, I think I would like it more. The start of the drag renaissance, iconic queens, great storylines, and fun challenges. I wish there was a better mix of challenge performers. Great cast and drama, but the top 4 felt obvious from the start. Amazing season with good diversity / variety and cast. I think it gets a bit boring near the end though with the predictability of the winner. Season 4 scores a 7.17 out of 10. Up next is probably the most inoffensive season ever. It's just like a good season. There's no other way to describe it. We have season 8. It's almost hard to talk about this season because I think it's good TV, but nothing extremely noteworthy, if that makes sense. The top 3 is one of my favorites of all time. I love Naomi's storyline. I mean, obviously I did a full video on it. Bob dominated the season, and I think that's where a lot of people get a little tripped up. It was obvious that Bob was winning at the end. Characters like Thorgy Thor, Derek Barry, Acid Betty, they round out the cast really well. And we had the light and soul that is Chi-Chi DeVayne, rest in peace. The big issue of the season, aside from the fact that Bob just really dominated, was the fact that it took a hit in the budget to make up for All Stars 2's budget. So it's much shorter than other seasons around this time, and though I think they did an amazing job still establishing the characters, it still felt like we had a couple episodes left to really get to know each of these people. There's a reason that so many of them have stuck around so long in the fandom. Aside from All Stars appearances, they are just really an eclectic group that you just enjoy. So it almost stings a little more that they didn't get more time on a season. Too short. This is a good micro season. I'm thankful for All Stars 2, but season 8 definitely suffered because of it. Given a couple more episodes and a larger budget, this season could have been so much better. I'm biased, but this season was great. The perfect season to start watching Drag Race because it's short and not overwhelming. It made me be curious for the other seasons. Stellar cast with lots of talent, top 3 winners of the franchise, great drama, good challenges, the season of icons. Season 8 scores a 7.22 out of 10, and it starts our top 10 seasons of the list. This is another season that if I did the ranking a couple years ago, I do not think it would be ranked nearly this high. All Stars 4 has seen such an uptick in the fandom, and that both surprises me and also doesn't. I think over time, people have finally shaken off what happened to Manila and have adopted Naomi as like this icon, and I might be a person that agrees with that. Even if that elimination is looked at as iconic now, there's still merit to the fact that it kind of tanked the season. At the very least, it hurt the tension of the next episode, and the finale with a double win felt just super strange. There's still just so much to love about this season though. The amount of iconic moments both in challenges and just in the workroom are hard to count. Anything to do with Gia, Naomi, Valentina, it's all just so entertaining. And I'll probably go on record to say that this is my favorite cast of all time. There's queens who made it super far, there's finalists, there's fan favorites, there's queens who have past relationships that they need to iron out. The cast was calculated down to a T, and even though it probably didn't end up where they expected, everyone still kind of benefited from it. A lot of queens walked away with redemption, some of them walked away a little worse off. Unfortunately, Latrice is one of them. Still though, over time, this season has really solidified itself as such an influential season when it comes to Drag Race. People still talk about being eliminated like Manila or being Manila till today, and the twinners of the season are 2 of the most well-known queens of the show and reappeared on All Star 7. It is a season that is constantly brought up for both the good and the bad, but from my viewers' perspectives, it seems like the good outweighs the bad. Literally such a good season until Manila's elimination. Not even like a Manila stan, the last 2 episodes were just doo-doo. I really love it. Peak Valentina, Life's Not Fair, Mo Hart killing it in every challenge. Hate the ending, but happy they got to be winners, and it was a good plot for All Star 7. Underrated. People love to dog on the season and drag the double crowning, etc. But truly, other than the horrid acting challenge, every episode was a hit and so entertaining. Every single cast member brought so much to the season in a way that most seasons do not. And it's a hot take, but this is probably the second best All-Stars cast behind All-Stars 1. All-Stars 4 scores a 7.24 out of 10. The most recent completed regular season of the show, season 15, is up next. On a first watch, I didn't really love this season, but I think that was more so to do with the fact of what was going on in my life, and it ended up souring the experience for me, and also the shorter runtimes was just terrible. But after a rewatch, I have realized that this season is so good. The challenge performances and the runways, the characters on this season, the drama, it never really feels mean-spirited. All of these traits are present here, and even if they aren't the most unique, they are just done super well. Not to mention, the pacing of the season, especially after season 14, was incredible. The cast was really big, and I think a lot of people suffered because of that. It was a very top-heavy cast. It just feels like the competition was a real competition with someone going home each week. But like I said, top-heavy cast, and you can really tell by like episode 5 who are going to be the top 4, and that predictability, especially when I was going in depth with the season, kind of took me out of it. On a rewatch, when you kind of know everything that happens, you can sit back and appreciate the smaller things of the season. These might be deep cuts to a lot of people, but it's like the Survivor token cheens or the Big Brother 10 of the Drag Race seasons. The seasons I just mentioned strip back the twists and just let the seasons play out as it would on paper. And that's true here with Drag Race. There are no twists in these episodes outside of, I guess, a double Shantae at the end, and I think it was just a really good idea by the showrunners to do this, and I think they should find solace in the fact that people are going to enjoy the show even if they don't shake up the format every single time. I don't think the challenges were as innovative as season 14, but that's not to say that there aren't challenges that are incredible here. I love the placement of the ball this season, didn't really love the placement of Snatch Game though. The house design challenge was a really great concept, and Wig Loose as a musical was perfectly timed. They wrote and filmed Wig Loose before the summer of 2023, where queer and trans people were under attack for so much of it, but it just sat perfectly on the season and was such a great message for the show. And of course, we have to mention the cast like Anitra, Mistress, Lux, Lucy, Sasha Colby, good. Sasha Colby. Oh, this was good. I think everyone can agree that the 40-minute runtime really fucked it over, but the fact that it was still so well received despite that really shows how great of a season it was. The cast was fire. So many queens became stars of the drag community immediately, and I mean, Mother was there. Sasha finally got her crown, and now she's conquering the world. With the full episodes being released, this season feels so much better. With such a large cast, they managed to balance it well, and especially with a queen going home every episode. Season 15 scores a 7.87 out of 10. Another personal favorite season of mine is up next with All-Stars 6. I remember back in 2021, people were like, oh, this cast, I don't really know about it, only some stars, yada yada yada. This reaction was definitely because of All-Stars 5 and how middling it was received. But they learned from All-Stars 5, and the storytelling here makes all of the cast feel like all-stars, and that is so important. The top 2 queens of the season being Kylie Sonique Love and Raja O'Hara, 2 queens who originally didn't place that well on their original seasons, now coming back and redeeming themselves and being the heavy hitters of the season. That goes to show they can craft storylines about anyone and have them work super well. Redemption was the main tagline of this season, and everyone who went on got redemption in some way. Someone like Silky got the ultimate redemption, basically getting a whole episode to herself and making her a fan favorite of the fandom, which feels just so right. And for once, a twist on Drag Race worked out with the game within a game. Even with the first out Serena Chacha, she didn't have the best performance on the season, but just seeing her there and seeing her evolved from season 5, that was great and it felt good, and this whole season just feels good. And I think a main reason why it felt so good was because everyone there looked like they were having a wonderful time. This was filmed shortly after lockdown when everything was opening up just a little bit, so people were just excited to be in a room together and competing regardless of the outcome. So the light and the happiness, it all shone through, and I just really appreciate this season. It was the last season that I remember staying up until midnight every night waiting for it to come out so I can watch it. I've done that for other seasons more recently, but not as consistently as I did for All-Stars 6. Something about the storytelling mixed with the format really gripped me and wanted me to watch every week. A cast on paper I didn't think would work, but absolutely did. Had so much fun, shared out challenge wins, great storylines specifically for Silky and Raja. Redemptions for everyone, the lip syncs were amazing. My favorite All-Stars. Cast was unique and charming, challenges were bomb, placements were mostly deserving. Revival of All-Stars. All-Stars 6 scores an 8.22 out of 10. There are only 6 seasons left, 2 of them I would consider modern seasons, and 1 ends up right here. It is a personal favorite of mine, season 12. The universe was honestly against this season from the start, having a contestant get disqualified, one of the finalists actually, having a major player in the story and the competition get edited out of the season super last minute. No one would have faulted the season if it ended up being terrible, but honestly, basically everyone benefited from the edit and we got a really amazing season. The lack of a queen in the edit allowed for everyone to shine a lot more, and we got to see sides of queens that I don't know if we would have gotten to see if there was a full other queen in the edit. This started the trend of a cast of queens that felt super strong and all-stars ready if any of them got eliminated. I remember being extremely crushed when Rock'em Soccer went home so early because she felt like she was gonna go super far. And I'm not the only one who thought this. RuPaul also really enjoyed the season, with the top 6 being some of her favorite queens. I just like when people are able to excel at the thing that they're good at. Much like season 14, it felt like a celebration of drag, and all the low performances weren't even that bad. They've also never had the same caliber of guest judges that they had on season 12. Nicki Minaj, Jeff Goldblum, Whoopi Goldberg, these are insanely big stars. It's an incredible season. I could do without some of the drama, like the Britta and Aiden stuff kind of felt dragged out, but I really just enjoy it from start to finish. And I don't think Drag Race would be as successful as it was today without season 12. We saw how low seasons 10, 11, and 13 were ranked, and with that trend, season 12 should have probably also been low too. But like with a lot of the bad seasons, they learned from their mistakes and they were able to capture a lot of amazing moments during the global pandemic where everyone was glued to their screen. Drag Race would always be successful and have an upwards trajectory, but I think having such an incredible season during a time where there was nothing else to do, it grew the fan base to high highs that I don't think we'll ever see again. Jada. I think this season soared despite all of the obstacles with Sherry and COVID-19. We had great lip syncs, amazing challenges, and everything felt fun. You can tell the queens really loved each other. Best modern season. The talent of the cast was clear, the challenges were great, the runways were great, and the winner felt the most deserving. Really solid, if a little boring, and sadly hampered by the finale and the edit. Fierce cast, comfort watch, so many amazing queens. Season 12 scores an 8.30 out of 10. We've made it to our top 5 and our last modern season, a season after 2020. All-Star 7, from the fandom's perspective, definitely should be ranked this high. I have my own problems with the season that I think I'll get into at some point, but I don't really want to talk about them here. There is a reason that it's ranked this high, the talent is off the charts, and it's just a celebration of drag. We get to catch up with 8 of the winners of previous seasons and seeing how they grow and how they're going to come back to the competition to win again. It is so positive, almost to a fault, but I think it's for a good reason. They don't want to make any of their winners look bad. But it's also just kind of hard to make them look bad because so many of them did so well in the competition the entire time. There were like, what, 2 bad performances, maybe like Jada and the roast. That's all I can really think of right now. Performances, runways, and workroom dynamics wise, this is a top tier season. I could just watch them in Untucked for hours. Like, I don't need to see a competition. But speaking of the competition, I think a lot of the choices made towards the end with production were just not the best. But the beginning and the middle, and even the performances at the end, they make up for any choices made by production. Like with season 12, you just enjoy people being good at drag. And though this was probably the last time a lot of these queens will appear, I'm happy that all of them went out on such a high note. Love this season. It felt so good to see the winners come back and show us their talents, and I had so much fun watching it. Jinx definitely deserved that win, and my only problem with the season is the finale. The season died nearing the end. At first, I felt like the challenges were going to be elevated since they were all winners, like they did Double Snatch Game, but then it developed into the same old acting challenge and such. Also, the 3 stars for winning the final challenge was bullshit. Not much to say about this one beyond it's really pleasant and lovely. It coming down to a lip sync tournament is silly when they definitely wanted Jinx as a winner, but it's just really satisfying to watch people be really good at Drag Race. All-Star 7 scores an 8.33 out of 10. I feel like from this point on, you might be able to figure out where the last 4 place. These are commonly talked about as the best seasons of the show for one reason or another, and this next season is probably the one that is slightly lower than the other 3. Even with that, season 9 is still an amazing season that should be up here. One of the best newbie casts of all time, the best premiere guest judge. There's a lot of cool challenges, some are disastrous, but in a way where you can't really look away. There are insane eliminations and medical evacuations that set a precedent going forward for the show, and of course, this is the first season with the lip sync for the crown with one of the most iconic moments of the show. The lip syncs of the season ranged from being either amazing or absolutely terrible, but each terrible lip sync was a story for a different reason, and all of the storytelling of the season was really great. It was also the first season in a while where it really felt like each of the queens wanted to be there and compete as hard as possible. And it's honestly the season that I feel like they are still attempting to recreate the magic of till today. We got the lip sync for the crown format for so many other seasons, but it was never the same high as it was for season 9. The crazy guest judge in the premiere, it's great, but nothing nothing compared to Lady Gaga. One of the submissions that I got said there were so many natural twists, and I think that's the best way to put it. Unexpected moments like Valentina throwing a lip sync because she kept her mask on, you can't recreate that no matter how hard you try. There was chaos in so many different facets, but it was captured and controlled in the perfect way. It's a great first watch, but it gets better and better with each consecutive watch. It's highly recommended, a great start to the VH1 era. I need to watch it again to see if I would rank it even higher. Best cast, Drag Race started to be even more famous. The chemistry between the queens was amazing. We had tons of natural twists and it started a new era. My personal favorite, the workroom seemed the most lively this season, the judging wasn't terrible, and the queens brought it every single week. And it started the tradition of having a huge guest judge to open the season. Being the first VH1 season, it really knocked it out of the park with queer history, along with introducing the world to so many talented artists. Rose. Season 9 scores an 8.70 out of 10. We've made it to the top 3. It's really splitting hairs with these seasons. Number 3 is personally what I would have ranked at maybe number 1 at this point, but y'all have it ranked here. It is season 5. It is such an incredible cast, maybe a little top heavy because you really remember that top 8, bolstered by the fact that a lot of them competed together on an all-star season 2, but you don't really care because that top 8 is incredible. It has 2 of the most iconic storylines from the show, Coco versus Alyssa and Jinx Monsoon's winter story arc, and the transition between these storylines taking center stage. I could write a full video about it. I kind of already have actually. It plays around with the reality TV garbage of the time, if that makes sense. Some of the moments of the show can be seen as a little trashy by Drag Race's standards today, but that's honestly what makes it so special, and I wish we can get back to that in some ways. Like take the bus scene from the first episode. We're never gonna have them lip syncing on a bus while celebrities wave on a green screen to them. That is so stupid, so of the time, but it ends up being campy and really entertaining. For many reasons, we'll never get a season like this again, but we can at least enjoy what we had. It's always the season that I'm going to recommend to people first because it just kind of gets people addicted to Drag Race. I appreciate everything that this season has done, and I wish in some ways we can go back, but the way that Drag Race has evolved on this amazing foundation, it makes me appreciate this season even more. One of the most iconic seasons. I gave a point away because I think the early outs didn't get enough screen time. If I'm being honest, it felt like filler queens, but the other queens were so iconic. Hi, at Runner I played you on hashtag Drag Race during hashtag Snatch Game. I want to apologize for not serving hashtag Runner I realness. P.S. I'm a huge fan. He actually DM'd me and said that this wasn't him, and I want to believe him, but I don't know if I do. Great storytelling and so competitive. I think it may be the season with the queens who won the most challenges. Amazing, no notes. Top tier Drag Race. Season 5 scores a 9.11 out of 10. So take everything I said about season 5 and just move it 1 year over. At number 2, we have season 6, another just amazingly entertaining season. One thing I think this season has over season 5 is where season 5 was super top heavy. Basically every single person on season 6 got some characterization and a moment in the sunshine. We know people like Magnolia Crawford or Kelly Mantle even though they went out in the first episodes, and that's thanks to the first ever split premiere that really showcased this cast super well. On top of that, people like Gia Gunn and Milk didn't last super long in the competition, but we know them so well. So well, in fact, that people begged them to come back for All-Stars. But of course, the top queens of the season like Darian Lake, Ben de la Creme, Courtney Act, Adore Delano, and of course, Bianca Del Rio really made this season. Much like seasons 5 and 9, the chemistry they had in the workroom was really electric, and in a lot of ways both competitive and super heartwarming. I talked about this recently, but Bianca had a really great storyline being able to shed off her cold demeanor and open up to a lot of the queens. So you see her dominate the competition, but also become this super likable, well-rounded queen. And that happens for a lot of queens who make it late into the season, people like Adore and Trinity. They both struggled early on, but they were able to get help from people like Bianca to start excelling in the competition. Bianca really showcased that you can be good at Drag Race and not really have many faults. Most of the past winners had their ups and downs, but for Bianca, she never really faltered in the competition, and that was really refreshing at the time, and it's honestly still refreshing now. Most of the previous winners, they had their ups and downs, but were still able to take hold of the competition. Bianca took hold and never let go, never had downs, honestly. I still feel like there's no one that's excelled at the competition as much as Bianca did on season 6. Maybe Dayla on All Stars 3 or Jinx on All Stars 7. Shea Coulee on season 9 could also give her a running, but still, I always come back to Bianca for a good reason. It's an incredible season. That's the end of the golden age for the show. I'm always going to come back to it and enjoy it. And it's the regular season that you guys rank the highest. Great cast, great lip syncs, the introduction of the split premiere, a lovable underdog in Adore, and an all-time great winner of Bianca. My personal favorite season. Every queen really has their moment in the season. While there is some drama, this season feels mostly like pure talent and camaraderie. Hey, put your lighters up. Ganja's in the house. Ow. I don't want to do Laganja's voice, I'm going to be honest. Season 6 scores a 9.16 out of 10. And we've made it to number 1. I feel like a lot of you could have guessed this. It is All-Stars 2. Surprise, surprise. It's an amazing cast with some of the best drama from the show that may have not aged the best, but looking at the season as just pure entertainment, it is incredible. The performances this season, I mean, do I really have to get into them? The talent show, Katya in Alaska and Snatch Game, Herstory of the World, lip syncs like Shut Up and Drive, are you kidding me? There is not a single dud challenge of the season, and all of the performances, even if they're bad, are iconically bad. Something like Alyssa's performance in the acting challenge gets to me. I think what is best about the season is the storylines that we get and the storylines coming into the season. The Fifi storyline, a lot like her first run, it does suck in hindsight, but on the show and watching how it's crafted, it is a marvel. Having so many season 5 queens come back to basically continue their storylines, that is super interesting. The cast was super calculated and they all went in giving it their all because they didn't know if there was going to be another All-Stars. And it's just great casting because it really felt like all of them had an equal shot. No season is perfect, but this one has really stood the test of time, especially in the eyes of my viewers. I think the best way I can put it is like it's the Avengers season of Drag Race. It just scratches an itch that so many other seasons can't scratch. We'll never get another season like this, and I think that's okay, because what we got is the highest rated season by over 1,000 people. Period. Iconic, GOAT, iconic, goated, yes. Gold standard for All-Stars. Every All-Star season afterwards has been trying to recapture the magic of All-Stars 2. The Comeback Comedy Challenge is my favorite episode of all time. It's a perfect narrative, except Fifi should have won the lip sync against Alaska to send Alyssa home. This would have made for much more satisfying when Alyssa eliminates her in the comeback episode. This is the Drag Race season. I don't know what I can say that hasn't already been said. Even the parts that were produced well. I just wish the fanbase would realize that a TV caricature isn't all a person is. Lightning in a bottle. You can never recreate the magic of this season. The cast is perfect, the drama, the challenges are great, the returning queens episode, shocking lipstick eliminations. And with that, All-Stars 2 scores a 9.25 out of 10. Oh my god, this is now my longest video, and I'm happy about that. This is so cool. Thank you again for everyone who submitted something. It really helped out my ranking. I had to record this in so many different parts because it was just taking such a long time. I want to do this again at some point in the future because time eventually tells where rankings will fall. But for right now, tune into season 16 because that's the next season that will be ranked. This was a long time coming. Thanks again for sticking around till the end of this video, and thank you Sundays for sponsoring this video. I'm gonna go edit this. It's gonna take me all night, but it's so worth it. I'll see you soon with another video.